Hello, and welcome to this evening's Hip Historian Virtual Happy Hour Tour. I am Brenda Holt with AARP Arizona. During the month of March, we will focus on providing resources to help consumers manage their debt and savings and provide trusted information to make the best financial decisions. AARP is your wise friend and a fierce defender of consumers' finances, and we are helping you manage money while fighting on your behalf to protect what you've earned. We are here for you, and we will help you navigate the challenging road ahead. Visit us at aarp.org/money or aarp.org/moneymap. AARP is the nation's largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to empowering people 50 and older to choose how they live as they age. With a nationwide presence of over 38 million members and 900,000 right here in Arizona, AARP works to strengthen communities, and we advocate for what matters most to families, such as health security, financial stability, and personal fulfillment. We're glad you can join us this evening. I'll now turn things over to Marshall Shore.
Ladies and gentlemen, non-binary folk, welcome to the show. Get ready to meet your host for the night, Arizona's very own hip historian himself, Marshall Shore.
Well, hello, good evening. I want to welcome you all to Arizona History Happy Hour. I am so glad that you can make it. Oh my gosh, are you still down there? Wow. All right, so we have our first, I guess our only international guest at the moment. So thank you so much for joining. So this is Arizona History Happy Hour. I am your host, Marshall Shore. Now, today is March 17th. So, one of the caveats of doing something with a green screen is that I can't wear any green because otherwise I would wind up being just a floating head. And nobody wants to see that. So, but today is the 17th. And so it is also, we're kind of sandwiched right in on the eve of the saguaro blossom becoming the official flower of the Arizona Territory back on March 18th of 1901 was when that happened. And then it wasn't until 1931 on March 16th, it actually became the official state flower for Arizona. And of course, it is indeed St. Patrick's Day. So I have a feeling there are many folks out there having a touch of the green. So we all know, so St. Patrick's Day is commemorating an Irish patron saint and is probably one of the most globally celebrated holidays, along with copious amounts of green beer and whiskey shooters. Now, that's not our our cocktail for tonight. Now, it is also National Corned Beef and Cabbage Day. Funny it should fall on such a day. Now, I thought it was funny because, when you're trying to explain corned beef to people, there is no corn in corned beef. It basically refers to the salt that was used to cure it and is truly an American innovation. So while ham and cabbage was eaten in Ireland, when they got to the US, they found a much cheaper substitute, which was corned beef and cabbage. So that's how we got corned beef and cabbage. So maybe some of you are celebrating with that green today as well. It is also absolutely incredible Kid Day. So let's take this day, to say thank you to all those kids, tell them how great they are. And, you might even want to put that on paper. Because, I know as a kid, it was so exciting to get any sort of a birthday card, anything that was addressed to you. So take a moment and hopefully send something off to a kid that you know and No, no one gets to pinch me. Well, I could actually, I am wearing green, but it's just below the screen on my pants before anybody gets with a dirty mind starts going somewhere else. All right. So what can you expect tonight? Well, we always do a little bit of Arizona music trivia. We also do trivia. We have Little Arizona talking about a town in Arizona, as well as From the Vault, which is something that you might find in plain sight, but don't know that much about. Also, we do indeed have a beverage and as well as a special guest. But before we get there, if this is your first time watching, you might wonder, who is that man and why is he on my screen? Well, I told you my name is Marshall Shore. I got here a little over 22 years ago. I was working in Brooklyn at this Carnegie Library and decided to trade all that honeyed wood as well as that snow, that blistering wind that would whip through you on days, for a little library in South Phoenix. And that's what got me here and really kind of got me listening to stories of the communities that I was working in. And then we moved into a lovely 1956 ranch house. Now, our ranch house is pretty much a time capsule, but when we moved in, it was oh so many tones of beige on the outside. I am happy to say now it is seafoam and cantaloupe on the outside, just two simple colors. Now, there's my kitchen looks like. All that buttercream yellow tile with the original appliances as well that match. Now, as soon as we got here, all we kept hearing about how there was no history here. But I knew that wasn't true because every time I would get on my bike, go in a car, even walk around my neighborhood, I kept coming up with so many amazing people, places, and stories. And then there's always that post-war boom that I think in so many ways made the Arizona that we all know and love today. All those GIs that either were stationed here, trained here, or passed through on the way to somewhere else. And after the war, they were moving to Arizona looking for a whole new way of life. Now, I am also known as the hip historian. You might wonder, what does that really mean? Well, that means I get to go have fun with Arizona history. In fact, actually, this weekend, we are doing our haunted history tour of downtown Phoenix. As well as on Sunday, I'm so excited. I am getting to do a presentation that I've been working on for a while about Casablanca, which is a kind of fabled private home turned resort, now turned living community. It's got a great history. And so I'm going to share that with residents on Sunday. In fact, I actually was just talking to one of the old, not one of the old residents, but a resident who had lived actually in that big onion dome. That was her place for almost 20 years. And also, if you make your way out to Fountain Hills, you will find a green fountain. Just because I think it's pretty cool that they do dye the fountain green for St. Patrick's Day. Also, this weekend, there's a lot going on for Art Detour, so hopefully you'll get out there and go have some fun. Now, I see some of you have found the chat off to the side. Don't forget, if you're not able to get something in the chat or you want to say something else after, you can always throw me something on Facebook, Instagram, email, off my website. It's all good. So we have our cocktail for tonight. And so PJ has been creating all kinds of cocktails over the last while. And so tonight we are doing the Price of Being a Baron, which has 2 ounces. And so PJ actually packages it for me in this cute little, so I don't have to necessarily be aware of all that's in here. But you've got Adventurous Stilts Peralta Bourbon. And you might wonder why Peralta Bourbon. We'll explain that in just a little bit. There's also a little bit of Abuelita's spiced chocolate simple syrup in there. Figlings, German fig liqueur, as well as some Spanish sherry. So all I have to do to make myself a cocktail is I just have to pour it in my glass. So I will just do that. And then I have the Price of Being a Baron. Oh, that's nice. You get those little chocolate notes. Ooh, and the fig goes in there really well. Oh, all right. Oh, so here we have Little Arizona. So this is a chance where we get to explore Arizona all over the place. And so tonight so it's so funny when I was researching Casablanca, one of the reasons why I think there's so many kind of mysteries about it is because there's so many Casablancas right here in Arizona. And so one of them is in Pinal County, has a population of about just a little over 1,000. And as you can see, is down near south of Tucson. And they've got a water tower. So that way you know exactly where you're at. Now, what's interesting is I was trying to figure out, well, where did that name come from? I discovered that it likely came from Ami White's trading post and mill that was first built in the early 1860s. Likely the first mill in Arizona territory. He was taking the Pima grain and grinding it into flour. Now, he was also stockpiling this during the Civil War, which made his trading post and mill a target. So he got captured. The mill was destroyed. Eventually, as the Confederate Army retreated, he was later exchanged, and he went back to working and rebuilt the mill, which helped supply the locals as well as the Union Army with food during the rest of the war. Then not long after that, it was destroyed by a flood. But because it was Ami White's place, people called it White's House, hence what became then Casablanca, which I think is a pretty interesting story for that. Now, Casablanca has other history as well. Now, that mill was also water driven since it was on the canal. And so you still can find use for all that water down there. Now, what I think is interesting is also one of the relocation centers during World War II when they did the internment of Japanese residents. And so if you go down there now, you'll find a monument and some plaques talking about what really happened in that area. It also has the Culberson Memorial Church, which the first church was a Presbyterian church to serve the Pima Indians. That building was dilapidated by the late 1920s. And so money was given for this church that we see here back in the late I think it was 1927. And it was named Culberson in remembrance of that donation. So I was so amazed that it was so close. And so I know next time I go to Tucson, I'm going to take a little pit stop and go visit Casablanca. All right. So now we get to bring on our oh so special guest, my friend Ash. Hello.
Hello. Hi,
How are you
everybody.
doing?
I'm doing pretty fantastic.
Good. So for folks that may not know much about you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, I'm a writer. I'm actually a lifelong Phoenix resident. So I'm one of those rare creatures who was actually born here and stayed. I frequently contribute to the Phoenix New Times, and I've also written for Echo Magazine and the Arizona Republic. I've also written for national magazines like Pitchfork and long reads and the AV Club. I'm a playwright. It's kind of my creative pursuit, and I'm the assistant artistic director at Space D5 Theater, which is an independent nonprofit theater that's been in Phoenix for about 15 years now. So I've written shows for them, helped acted and stuff, and I've been kind of very involved in the theatrical scene over the years. Actually, how I met Marshall is that a long time ago is that I took an improv class. There's only 3 people that were in that class, and it was myself, Marshall. Was it Jeff Cardell or Shane Shannon was the third person? I can't remember. No, it was Alexander Cherry, I think, was the third person.
Oh, I don't remember. I remember you, but I don't
I
remember.
remember.
And I think Jose was our teacher.
He was. I remember because you took a real shine to it, and I did not. Oh man, that was rough. I looked like in the class. I was just like, oh.
So yeah, no, I thought that was funny. I was thinking about that too. I was like, oh my gosh, we first met doing improv.
At a certain point in Phoenix, everybody meets for improv classes. It really is
Well,
a small
and that was
town.
back when there really was not a comedy scene, and now there's a huge comedy scene here.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we like with improv, we went from having like just one improv theater that had to work out of like the Burton Bar Library. It's like, I think there's like two or three of them now that actually have their own dedicated spaces. So, yeah, comedy in all aspects has exploded here.
So with Space 55, how are they doing with COVID?
We've been doing pretty well. Knock on wood. We've actually gotten some like operating grants, so we've been all right. We did have to leave our last space because we rented a building on 19th Avenue in McDowell, and our landlord was actually very cool during the pandemic. Like he gave us a reduced rate. He basically said, so long as nobody comes along and wants to pay the full rate, you guys can stay here as long as you need to. But eventually, I think back in May, somebody did come in and wanted to pay the full price, so we had to kind of take our stuff and put the storage. So we are kind of in the market right now, finding a new location. But we're planning on renting some some locations in the meantime, do some shows later this year. So we're still we're still in existence. We're still a producing body. We just don't currently have a base at the moment.
No, that's great. That's what I was
Unfortunately,
hoping. Because I mean, you guys have such a great voice, and providing such. I mean, that's one of the things I've always enjoyed about Space 55 is just giving those voices to necessarily performances that might not be able to get into a larger space.
Oh no, definitely. I mean, that's one thing I think. When Shauna Franks founded the theater, that was kind of her vision. Was like she came from this kind of Chicago environment, like she's a professional actress, but she also wanted to bring in like local people and performance artists and people who didn't necessarily have like degrees or pedigrees to get out on stage and do their thing too. So like, I think that's kind of one of the value as a community. It's like, yeah, we do like these very professional kind of structured shows, but we also do like open mics and variety shows and vaudeville, and like we kind of have a little something for everybody.
Right. So yeah, so thank you guys for keeping that torch going with the performance arts because it's so important.
Oh, I miss it a lot. It's one thing about COVID.
I
Like
can only
I miss so
imagine.
much being in a building with people. Oh, it's frustrating, but it's also good. We also been playing it safe, so like I don't regret.
Exactly, which is good. So very good. All right. So now I know we've got some really fun trivia coming up. So just let people know. So how we do trivia here is, so we'll go through the multiple choice questions, and then we'll take a little bit of Arizona music break, and then we'll come back and tell the stories of those answers. And so that's where the fun always happens. It's not going to be like some bar trivia where they kick you out after the first round of trivia and just give you the answers. We give you the stories as to why. So that way, once you get to go to a cocktail party, you'll have all kinds of stories to amaze your friends with. All right. So our first question is, this musician and record producer got his start working as a disc jockey in Coolidge, Arizona, before teaming up with singer Nancy Sinatra. Now, who was that? Was it A, Dwayne Eddy, B, Billy Strange, C, Lee Hazelwood, or D, Mickey Most? So which one of those people got their start as a Coolidge disc jockey and then teamed up with Nancy Sinatra for many a hits? All right, moving on to question 2. In the 1980s, a venue for the local underground and punk music scene was Madison Square Garden. It was one of the most distinctive features of the space was its stage, which was A, a wrestling ring, B, a drained indoor swimming pool, C, a raised platform surrounded by chain link fence, or D, a decommissioned McDonald's ball pit. So what was one of the most iconic features of Phoenix's Madison Square Garden. You might have heard other buildings called that around the country, but we had our own Madison Square Garden right here. And so, what do you think it was the stage was like? All right, moving on to question 3. This National Book Award winner spent the last years of his life living in Phoenix, Arizona, before his death in 2017. Was it A, Edward Abbey, B, Hayden Cruff, C, Tina Rosenberg, or D, Dennis Johnson? So which one of those was a National Book Award winner and also lived here in Phoenix? All right. Question 4. Back in 1971, a road movie starring James Taylor, Dennis Wilson, yes, that Dennis Wilson, and Warren Oates called Two Lane Blacktop. Which 2 towns was Two Lane Blacktop filmed in Arizona? Was that A, Kingman, B, Coolidge, C, Yuma, or D, Flagstaff? So, all you got to do is pick one, and, your chances are pretty good about getting it right, even if you've never heard of the movie. All right, moving on to question 5. There's a spectral figure in Arizona folklore called the Red Ghost, a dead man who haunted farms by riding atop what? A donkey, B, a camel, C, an ostrich, or D, a buffalo? So what do you think that spectral figure was? The haunting of the Red Ghost. All right, question 6. Oh, and I didn't change the answers here. All right, question 6. Musical trio Sun City Girls were pioneers of experimental music and linchpins of the early Arizona underground. Which of the following is not an album by the Sun City Girls? A Torch of Mystics, B, Horse Pfeffer or Pfeffeneffer, C, Locust Abortion Technician, or D, 330,003 Crossdressers from Beyond the Rig Veda? That's a mouthful of an album right there if I've ever heard of one. All right, so question 7. Johnny Rivers recorded By the Time I Get to Phoenix back in 1965. It was made famous by Glenn Campbell's cover. It was also covered by a soul artist. That singer was A, Curtis Mayfield, B, Al Green, C, Bobby Womack, or D, Isaac Hayes? So which one of those do you think was the soul artist that also covered By the Time I Get to Phoenix? Question 8. Filmed in 1993 on location in Douglas, Arizona, with Johnny Depp, Jerry Lewis, Faye Dunaway, and Vincent Gallo. That movie is called A, World Gone Wild, B, Arizona Dream, C, Underground, or D, Rancho Deluxe? So what do you think the movie was called that had all those celebrities and was filmed in Douglas, Arizona? All right, so back in 1965, Elvis Presley left Graceland in a motorhome for Hollywood. Outside of Flagstaff, he saw a face in the clouds. Whose face did Elvis say he originally saw in the clouds? Was it A, Adolf Hitler, B, Richard Nixon, C, Joseph Stalin, or D, Mao Zedong? All right. So whose face do you think Elvis saw in the clouds? And question 10. Oh my God, I love this movie so much. And in case you couldn't tell, I mean, that was where the whole impetus for the cocktail for tonight came from. All right. So question 10, con man James Addison Revis. His life story was brought to the silver screen in The Baron of Arizona. And who was starring as Revis? A, Vincent Price, B, Jimmy Stewart, C, Walter Brennan, or D, Gene Evans? So who do you think was the star of The Baron of Arizona? Such a classic historical movie about Arizona, but we'll get into that in just a bit. Now, while you are locking in all your final answers, we are going to take a little bit of an Arizona music break. And so tonight we are going to talk about Hurricane Carla Brownlee. Oh my gosh. So she is a tenor, baritone saxist, and vocalist. She spent the 80s based in New York City. She toured nationally, went through Europe. She was on TV and on shows like Soul Train, Solid Gold, American Bandstand, and even the David Letterman Show. She also has done guest spots with a variety of musicians, from the Violent Femmes to the Benva Combo, the Skeletons, the Del Lords, Sidstra, and Johnny Sex. Now, she moved to Tucson back in 1993 and has performed with a wide variety of bands there as well. You can still find her on stage down there, either performing or maybe seeing something she's written in terms of a play, as well as maybe even a song she's written. So she is still hanging out in Tucson, doing some amazing work. All right. So now who's ready for some answers? I see Ash is getting all excited. All right. So this musician and record producer got his start working as a disc jockey in Coolidge, Arizona, before teaming up with singer Nancy Sinatra. And who was it? Lee Hazelwood. So, he was at this little radio station, and it was said that he really was kind of the founder of kind of like that whole like morning zoo.
Yeah, it's interesting. Eddie, who's another one of the options on the quiz, who had like a very distinct, unique, twangy guitar sound. And he got that because Lee Hazelwood like dragged in a 2,000-gallon water storage tank to the sessions, and that's how he got it to kind of this like really cavernous, like loud sound for Eddie. And the two of them worked together like in Phoenix and Coolidge radio stations for years before they both kind of ascended in the music world.
Right. Yeah. I mean, actually, it was right over at Ziggy's, over on 3rd Street, where that water tank was. And so, yeah, and that's where they created the twang heard round the world.
And I just want to throw this out there that if y'all haven't heard, the collaborations that Nancy and Lee did together are just really just some stunning music. And some of it is just like the duet did Some Velvet Morning is still one of the strangest songs you could ever hear, because like you have like her doing like these very kind of like almost like chirpy, almost hippie vocals, and he does kind of this lonesome, like almost Clint Eastwood kind of like a counterpoint to her line. So it's a very strange but beguiling tune.
Well, and I love that they collaborated and created one of Nancy Sinatra's probably most famous song was "These Boots Are Made for Walking."
That's right. Yeah, Lee produced it, and I think Billy Strange arranged and conducted the sessions as well. So like, yeah, it was a big team effort, and it's just such an indelible song.
Yeah, I mean, and I always laugh because people don't realize. And I think also Dwayne Eddy played guitar on it.
Did he? Oh, well,
I think so. So yeah, so I mean, it was so funny. It was such a small world.
Which seems to be a kind of a running theme in Phoenix in general.
Indeed, it is.
Everybody knows everybody.
I mean, I always call things here like a 3 degrees of separation, not 6 degrees, because everybody knows everybody. And it's been that way since it was a tiny town, even though we're now the fifth largest city in the country. I think it's still that 3D separation. It's like you can pretty much get to so many people through just a few friends.
Yeah.
All right. So back in the 1980s, we had our own Madison Square Garden, and it was a huge part of the underground music scene. Now, one of its most distinctive features was what? A wrestling ring. Because it was originally, I mean, for the longest time, like in the 60s, so many folks went there to go see wrestling matches.
Yeah. So like it is a distinctive feature where it's like, you go see bands like, like Jodie Foster Army or Minor Threat playing in the middle of a ring with the ropes still up.
I didn't realize the ropes were still up. I just assumed that there was just wow, that's actually really good. By the time I got here, it was long gone. And so, I mean, the building no longer stands. There's now a plaque and kind of a little museum to acknowledge the fact that it was there.
A fun story about it is like I first heard about it a few years ago when Modified Arts did this punk art show where they had like all these vintage flyers and like ephemera from that era. And that's when I first heard it. They called the place Mad Gardens, and I met a bunch of the older punks who went to the exhibit. And I'm like, I kind of asked them like, why did so many like relatively big touring bands came through Phoenix in the 80s? Like if you look at like all these seminal like underground punk and like post-punk groups, they almost all came in for Phoenix for this time. I'm like, why did they all keep coming here? And they said, well, mostly it's because Phoenix had really good heroin at the time. So he said the drug quality here was so good that bands would make sure that they would pass through here. They're booking their tours.
Just stock up for the rest of the tour.
Basically, yes.
That's funny. Yeah, it was also called the Madhouse. So I mean, it went by a variety of names, and a lot of things happened there. All right. So question 3. This National Book Award winner spent the last years of his life living here in Phoenix before he passed away in 2017. And who was that? It was D. Dennis Johnson.
That's right. And actually, I think he does actually mention Arizona in Tree of Smoke, which was his National Book Award winning title.
Indeed. He also had some other titles as well, but that one was the one that got the most recognition.
Oh, Jesus! Yeah, I think that one he's well known for is Jesus' Son, which was kind of a kind of like a William kind of Burroughs-esque story about junkies. There's every series of short stories, which it's a magnificent man that anybody's interested.
Indeed. All right. So back in 1971, a road movie starring James Taylor, Dennis Wilson, and I think that's the Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Wow. And Warren Oates. It was called Two-Lane Blacktop. Now, which 2 towns in Arizona was it filmed in? And it was Kingman and Flagstaff. Wow. I've never seen the movie.
It's fantastic. I think Criterion streams it pretty regularly, so it's pretty easy to find. But it was shot in 1971 by Monty Hellman, who was like this kind of independent filmmaker who knew Jack Nicholson very well, and actually I think gave him some of his earlier film roles. And it's kind of like if Easy Rider was kind of like this acid hippie kind of cash-in movie, Two-Lane Blacktop was like let's do that as a road trip movie, but let's like tap into like the arty European cinema that's happening at the time. Like, let's do like how would like Michelangelo Antonioni or how would Godard do a car movie, and that's kind of the approach that they took to Two-Lane Blacktop. And it's a really just like fascinating film where it's just these 2 guys, Wilson and Taylor, who basically just do this cross country race with Warren Oates' character, and it's just this incredible like kind of like a vibe film. And it's actually interesting too because the film was written by Rudy Wurlitzer, who was a kind of a cult novelist who wrote some great books like Nog. And but one of the things that makes Wurlitzer interesting is that he's actually was one of the heirs to the Wurlitzer family fortune. So the people who basically
That's what
made
I
up
was
the
gonna say. I
words
was
for
like, I can't
jukeboxes
imagine
and
there being
organs.
families that
Yeah.
were called Wurlitzer, and I'm like, wow.
Yeah, so if you read about Wurlitzer's life, like he traveled all across the world, and like, and you're like, how did he afford all these like childhood adventures? And you're like, oh, because he was a Wurlitzer, like he had access to that fortune. Kind of like how William Burroughs had access to like his family invented like an adding machine, so he kind of had that to draw on for most of his life.
Oh, I didn't realize that that's where Burroughs got his money from.
That's right. Yeah, no, he had like I think he had like a trust basically that he was able to go off. He was like his family invented like this adding machine. Like they basically helped invent like the cash registers, so he was able to like kind of live off that for a very long time.
Understandable.
Yeah, Two Lane Blacktop, fantastic movie. I hardly recommend it.
So that's available through Criterion?
Yeah, I don't know if it's. I think it's on their channel, but if not, I think the discs is still in print too. So
Okay. I'll have to keep a watch out for that. All right. So now there's a spectral figure in Arizona folklore called the Red Ghost. And it's a dead man who haunted farms by riding on top of what? And it was a camel.
this is a fun one. Yeah. The backstory for this one is actually goes to pre-Civil War, when Jefferson Davis was still in the government before the Confederacy. He helped spearhead the Camel Corps initiative, where they're like, okay, we're gonna buy like 70 camels from North Africa and Europe, and we're gonna bring them here, and we're gonna test them out as like pack animals and see kind of how they work out. Then the Civil War happened, and at that point they dropped the project like a hot potato. So you had all these kind of orphaned camels that kind of just headed to the Southwest. And as the story goes, one of these camels eventually ended up on a farmer's property in Arizona. He shot the camel dead, and when he went to go inspect the camel, he found a dead human skeleton strapped to its back. So then this became the story over the years of like this ghost story of like a camel with a bleached human skeleton riding it that appears like a phantom out in the wilderness of Arizona. So like, it'd be like almost kind of like our version of Ichabod Crane. Instead of the pumpkin
Exactly.
head, it's just a skeleton riding a camel.
Very cool. All right. So music trio Sun City Girls were pioneers of experimental music and linchpins of early underground music here in Arizona. Which of the following is not an album by the Sun City Girls? A, Torch of Mystics. Grotto Miracles. Now, the one that was not one of their albums was Locust Abortion Technician.
I picked this one because like all their album titles are ridiculous. but that one is actually an album by the Butthole Surfers, who are a Texas band who are actually kind of like the Texas equivalent of our Sun City Girls, because Sun City Girls were these guys who did this incredible like weird psychedelic noisy music, where they also drew from Asian musical influences, and they did an African musical influences. So they created this really interesting stew of strange sounds. And Butthole Surfers were basically a bunch of Texas punks who did too much acid, and they recorded a bunch of noise albums in the late '80s that all basically sound like they're from outer space. So they did something that gave a real kinship of each other.
Well, and one thing I love about Sun City Girls is, I mean, they've been having a bit of a resurgence.
That's right. They actually were last week. They're actually in town. The two surviving members, Richard and Alan Bishop, were brothers. They actually came to Phoenix to do like a panel discussion that I went to at the Club Placebo, which is a little.
Oh, wow.
It was really interesting. Yeah.
That would have been really good, because they would have been able to talk about a scene that there's not really much. I mean, a lot of people know a little bit, but their perspective would have been fascinating.
Oh, for sure. Like it's it's a cliche of a Phoenix living up to its name, where like our history just keeps burning itself out, disintegrating, and so much of that era, that history is just lost. But the Club of People are interesting because they're trying to archive it, and like I think they filmed like 6 hours worth of interviews with them before the panel, and like they have like all this like primary source documents and old zine copies that they're holding on to. So like they're I guess they're trying to build like an archive of at least that era of history for Arizona.
Well, I always think it's so fascinating because people just think we have a little bit of music history, but we have, I mean, from you've got Billie, who was the first country western female recorded. All the way, I mean, you've got the punk scene, you've got the twang around the world. There's so many different music styles. I mean, you've got Lewis Nash.
Oh, yeah.
We have such varied music history here in Arizona that I think people always forget about that.
Or like I love how like Nirvana, where it's like it's their unplugged album, like almost like a quarter of that album is Meat Puppet songs. So it's just amazing. It's amazing to think like you had these like desert punks who did like weird country music in Arizona, and then years later, like they're being covered by the biggest band in the world.
Right. So so the Eisendrath House, which is this old like 1930 adobe mansion over on Curry Road, in the 80s had become kind of like a squatter's house. And so I've got friends that said, oh yeah, no, we used to sit around the fire pit in the backyard and while the Meat Puppets played a concert, which would have just been amazing to be. I mean, it was probably 50 people in attendance at this thing and to be sitting there with the Meat Puppets, which would have been so much fun.
That sounds amazing.
It really does. All right. So question 7, Johnny Rivers recorded By the Time I Get to Phoenix back in 1965. It was made famous by Glenn Campbell's cover. It was also covered by a soul artist. Who was it? And it was Isaac Hayes. Wow.
Yeah, it's off his it was off his like his breakthrough album, Hot Buttered Soul, that came out in 1969. Which I know I'm being hyperbolic with praise tonight, but that also is something that if you haven't heard it, like seek it out. It's an incredible album, and it's like only 4 songs long, because it's bookended by covers. By he does Walk On By, and then he ends it with By the Time I Get to Phoenix. But he stretches those songs out. I think Walk On By is like almost 12 minutes long, and By the Time I Get to Phoenix, he takes that song and he stretches it to 18 and a half minutes. It's basically an entire side, a suite, and it's just an incredible song.
Well, no, actually, you're not. I mean, the thing is, you're not going on too much because this is a chance for you to really talk about what your passion is about Arizona. And I knew there would be some great music and movie questions in there. So, yeah, no, I mean, you're doing just what you should be doing, highlighting your passions.
Well, I think one thing fun to point out too is that like Hot Buttered Soul is also one of those records too where it's like, if you listen to hip hop, like it got that was one of those records that got like cherry picked for samples. Like one of Public Enemy's best known songs, Black Steel in the Hour of Chaos, is actually a sample from Hot Buttered Soul. Like they took the pianos off of I think the second track on there and just looped it, and it just creates this really incredible ominous sound. And that's all Ice Gates.
Wow. All right. So back in 93, down in Douglas, Arizona, there was a movie starring Johnny Depp, Jerry Lee Lewis, and Faye Dunaway and Vincent Gallo. That movie is Arizona Dream. I have to say another one I don't know about, so I will have to go check this one out.
It's a fun one. Very strange. Like it opens up like a daydream of like the main character like imagining that he lived as an Inuit in a past life, and then it just ends up him like dealing with his car dealership. Like it's a strange, fun movie. But what's interesting about it is that the director at the time was the Serbian filmmaker Emir Kusturica, who's kind of well known for winning the Palme d'Or for his film Underground. Like he made all these big art films in Europe, and was kind of a big deal before he came to America. And he made this film, and he had basically a nervous breakdown like halfway through the filming. So they had to stop filming Arizona Dream for a few months. What ended up happening is because you had these actors and nothing to do, Johnny Depp and Faye Dunaway ended up doing the music video for Tom Petty's Into the Great Wide Open, like in the middle of this film shoot. Because everybody was sitting around for a couple of months and had nothing to do, so they linked up with Julian Temple, who made that music video, and he basically borrows the cast from this movie that's in hiatus and uses it to make this big Tom Petty music video. And then they went back and they finished the film once the director was better.
Well, now I do have to I'm going to throw a note up from Doreen just because you're in good company, because she says Hot Buttered Soul by Ozzy Case is a wonderful album. So you are not alone in that at all.
Yeah, but it's a good movie. It's kind of this kind of surreal, quirky '90s comedy about it. It has a fantastic cast. Like Lily Taylor's in it too. Jerry Lewis plays a part where it's kind of in the vein of what he did of King of Comedy in the '80s, where he plays just this very, very prickly personality, which is completely at odds of how you normally would think his screen presence is, and it all works really well.
Nice. I will definitely check that out. All right, so back in 65, Elvis Presley left Graceland in a motorhome for Hollywood. Outside of Flagstaff, he saw a face in the clouds. Whose face did he originally see? And it's C. Joseph Stalin.
This story, it comes from the writer Peter Grolnick, who did like a huge 2-volume biography on Elvis's life. And in 1965, Elvis had left Graceland to go film a harem scarum in Hollywood. So, like, the king packed up, went in a motorhome, drove through Southwest, and when they were passing through San Francisco, Flagstaff, he sees over the mountains. He has like this vision, like this hallucination of a cloud formation that looks like Stalin. And he gets so shaken by it, like he pulls the motorhome to the side of the road. He gets out, he's crying. And then what happens is he claims that he sees this cloud that looks like Stalin. And all of a sudden, the cloud kind of changes form, and it becomes the face of God. So he ends up weeping. And the story he tells to the people that are with him is like, oh, I just saw God conquer communism basically in front of me, like through the clouds. So yeah, the king saw some shit apparently as driving over to Hollywood.
Well, and I love that you had Nixon as one of the answers. So I have a feeling a fair number of people put down Nixon.
Yeah, he was kind of bait because actually, because I think didn't Elvis meet Nixon at one point and like was deputized by him? Look, I don't think he's seen him in the clouds.
Because I know it was like he was trying to get deputized because he thought that meant he could take whatever he wanted to wherever he was traveling.
Basically, yeah.
So he's like, hey, if I become like an enforcement agent, then I can just travel with my kit of everything imaginable and no one's going to check it. I don't think it worked out quite like he thought it was going to.
Oh, c'est la vie.
Indeed. And there's another, so the other Elvis story that I've heard is he was performing here in the 50s at the Coliseum, and he went to go fill up with gas over at a station over off of Central. And I think it was because he was driving a pink Cadillac. One of the gas station men made a joke about it. And so Elvis slugged him. And then got in his Cadillac and drove off into the sunset.
Oh, but that's kind of story. Like, can you imagine being hit by Elvis? Like, I would live off that story for the rest of my life.
Oh my gosh! Exactly. I would have had my picture taken with it. It's like, can you sign? Can you sign where you hit me? I mean, all right. Question 10. Conman James Addison Rivas, whose life story was brought to the silver screen in The Baron of Arizona. And it starred who as Rivas? Vincent Price. I mean, what an amazing story about the Baron it is.
Oh, it's incredible. It's like, as cons go, like he's up there with Victor Lustig, like the guy who tried to sell Eiffel Tower. Like it's one of those like preposterous scams. Like he tried to because he tried but all this trouble to forge these Spanish land grants to try and claim to basically claim Phoenix as his own, like his own baron, his own territory, and it just absolutely blew up in his face.
Right, and so for his princess, that was the reason for the Peralta whiskey in this.
Right.
Because it was
And
the
the film
whole
itself is. No, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, it was a Pelta family. That's how he was trying to prove that he owned Arizona, was through the Pelta family.
Yeah, it's funny too because the film like shows that the great lengths he went to, like down to like going to like a monastery in Spain just to steal like the inks and the paper they would use,
and then would forge documents and then go visit and just like slip them in. So I mean, it was quite the scam. I mean, it's one of those things where I think a lot of people would just think it was fiction, but it's like he was a real person and really did this.
And it's great. And what's great too about the movie is that Vincent Price is just so sympathetic in that film, where like he's a complete shit, and like it's a terrible plan, but like you kind of root for him to succeed. Like it's such a preposterous, almost like the way that they film it, it's almost like Don Quixote, like it's like this great like romantic dream that can't possibly work, but you do end up kind of rooting for him in a way.
Right, and it almost did work. So
did, yeah.
I mean that's the shocking thing. And so that's actually we're going to show at the end of the night. We're going to show the trailer for that. I did find
awesome.
the entire movie does live on YouTube. So if you've never seen it, you can go to YouTube and find it for free.
That's a Samuel Fuller film, who's done lots of really interesting, unique kind of B movies over the years. He did like White Dog, Park Row, which is like an early history of like the newspaper industry in New York. It's really fun. Yeah, he's a very pulpy kind of guy, but he made a lot of good movies.
He did, and I mean, and I love Criterion. I think they did like a remastering of it several years ago, and so it's now in kind of their staple of films with Sam Fuller, and it's so well done. And it's got Vincent Price, who was one of my all-time favorites. So anything with Vincent Price.
Which a fun fact about Vincent Price. When I used to work at a bookstore, I used to like be like on the buy counter. And we get people would sell us books all the time. One of the books we'd always get, we get tons of cookbooks in. They were never worth anything because cookbooks don't retain their value as resellable books. Except one that my boss told me, there's one cookbook that actually is worth something. He says, "You tell me if you ever get a copy of the Vincent Price cookbook that's worth money." And I'm like, "What? Wait, what? There's a Vincent Price cookbook?" Years later, somebody sold us a copy of it, and it was like this big white tome with like Vincent Price like in a frilly apron, huge smile, and it's just you seeing the guy from Thriller like having like his his own cookbook. It's like it's this big culture shock to be like, oh yeah, he's a big big gourmet. And there's collect recipes throughout the years.
He would actually come to Scottsdale a lot for their foodie festivals as a judge for cuisine. So I mean, he was a big art collector, a big foodie. So yeah, he spent a lot of time here in the Valley. So I see Sarah's already thrown it out there, but I always like to ask people how they did, just because, So Sarah got 5 out of 10, and I always like to say, it's not how many you got right, but look at the stories you now know. You can talk about Madison Square Gardens. You can talk about the Red Ghost. So there's so many great stories that we shared tonight. So Ash, thank you so much for coming on and sharing kind of your slice of Arizona.
Thank you for having me on, Marshall. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing your passions and bringing up some really great memories, not just for me, but I know for several other folks out there as well. And also just helping make people aware that we do have history outside of what you're going to find in those textbooks. Some of that kind of off the beaten path, that weird, quirky history, we've got tons of it.
All sorts of weird things bloom in the desert. Same goes for history.
And indeed. So quick question. How can people find out about more information about Space 55?
Oh, sure. We do a website right now, space55.org, that we do updates on. We're also very active on Facebook. And also, I also post space stuff on Twitter. So if you want to follow me, I'm at Ashley Naftule, one word. But yeah, we should be having. Hopefully, we're gonna have shows announced pretty quickly over the next couple of months. So we have some stuff in the works.
Great. Please let me know, and I will be sure and forward that on to folks. So that way we can get maybe some new people in some of your seats.
Thank you, Marshall. We appreciate that.
Oh, more than happy to. All right, Ash, thank you so much, and have a great rest of your night.
You too.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Ash. That was so much fun as we get to explore a side of Arizona and an acid drug tripping side. So, which is indeed part of our history. So, all right. So now we are getting ready for From the Vault. And so, in honor of St. Patrick's Day, I thought, let's talk about, I don't want to say the elephant in the room, but if you're ever driving down Central, south of McDowell, you're going to notice the Irish Cultural Center and McClellan Library, which is a big stone building just kind of sitting there, looking a little out of place. Now, you might wonder, what is it? Well, they have a variety of exhibits where you can go there and take a look at reproductions of the Book of Kells, which are these really ornate titles that really are part of the gospel from the 8th, 9th century, from those manuscripts. They're all written in Latin, but they were really known for being super ornate. And it's a great place to go because you can also, you could get married here. But I think they've been doing a lot of, actually this week, they were doing a lot of different things. And you've got exhibits on like Hugo O'Connor, who was Irish and the founder of Tucson, as well as Nellie Cashman, who was larger than life, living in the West, and has become part of that lore, almost like the Red Ghost. Now, and yes, EJ, I have indeed read Weird Arizona, and there is so much more Weird Arizona so that's the fun of it. And so that's one of the reasons why we do this, is to try and clue people into some of that fun, kind of quirky things. So now you'll see why I always ask people, if you're watching on Facebook, you will want to click on that little box at the bottom that says share, because look at how much fun we've been having with Arizona history. People think it's boring and staid. It is not at all. And that's kind of the fun of it. Now, coming up next week, we're going to be at a top secret right now location, which I don't want to divulge, but we're going to be celebrating our 2-year anniversary, meaning we've got over 100 episodes in the can. We've been doing this weekly since March of 2020. So yeah, so it's been a wild ride, and looking forward to so much more. But that's going to be a fun thing. So that will be next week at 7 o'clock, same bat time, same bat channel. Oops. So remember, if you have any questions, please either throw them in the chat, or you can reach out to me via so many ways. I always want to give a shout out to Chris and Cole, who did that great video, and always PJ, my cocktail advisor. So cheers on the price of being a Baron. Oh, so tasty. As we're going to show a clip from Vincent Price in the Baron of Arizona. Have a good night, all, and see you next week.
Some wine, Father. Your horse is dead, Father. Your wagon firewood. I found you. Me, Rita.
I'm not a monk, Rita. To escape police, I had to wear this rope.
Who are you?
A wanderer like Cain looking for a woman of my own.
I tell you, she was beautiful. But I told her that a Spanish promise is like a Spanish pepper. It burns whoever tastes it.
Here's a hat.
Oh, thank you, Angie.
And here's a coat.
Ah,
I think this'll fit you.
Thanks.
What's the matter? Aren't you gonna finish the stew I made for you?
Oh, certainly, Angie. It's excellent.
It's your horses.
2 years ago in Madrid, I was dining with royalty one night. One of them said that no amount of washing could turn a gypsy white. I accused him of insulting the gypsies.
You said that to a nobleman?
I spit in his face and received 20 lashes on my back. That pig of a nobleman was the Marquis de Santella.
Santella? Secretary to the king?
He's a pig. He prays every night to the devil.
He's rich.
I know. And I have a plan. In his house is much gold. I know exactly where it is hidden. But I need help. And we can all share in that great wealth.
It's too dangerous.
She's right.
A thief never takes chances. We can get that gold.
Then why do you need us?
I told you I have a plan.
As it is, they chase us like dogs from one province to another. Madrid. The Marquess would order half of Spain to hunt us down.
Does a girl make decisions for you?
She has a man's shrewdness.
A shrewd woman would know when to trust a man.
Now, why should we trust you? We don't know who you really are or where you come from. Tomorrow you leave our camp.